Hello humans, hello humans. A couple of things I just needed to note. It's like, okay people, don't get bent out of shape. I'm alright. I'm just healing up. I'm bitching and moaning because I'm old and it takes a long time to heal. Okay. I get stabbed. I used to bounce back in like a few days. I had a saw go through my leg and almost cut it off on a Sunday morning at 9. I went that entire day without any pain pills, just the way things worked out. No pain relief other than the lidocaine. This was back in 2003, but I was back to work on the roof that had caused the saw accident to begin with 3 days later. Okay, and that's with a big giant gash and over 300 stitches in the leg. So I'm just moaning that I'm not healing as fast as I used to. So there's that aspect of it. So, don't take it to heart. It's not a big deal. Anyway, so I did want to talk about a few things. Some of the things are more amusing and irritating than otherwise, but it's like, I just saw David Wilcock and Nino, okay? And David Wilcock's an idiot. Just saying. He's every bit as much an idiot as Carrie Cassidy, okay? They both have this fatal blockage in their vision of things, and if you are not a whistleblower, your thoughts and your conclusions aren't worth shit. And this is how they easily get suckered into all of these things. She's got this ultimate in California. And so, as far as she's concerned, she buys all of his horse shit 100%, hook, line, and sinker, because he's like the ultimate whistleblower to her. I don't know how he ever convinced her to believe any of his shit. He's 100% lying. This is Mark Richards, her supposed secret space program guy whose grandpappy was a secret space program pilot for Lincoln. For Abe Lincoln, that kind of shit, right? Anyway, David Wilcock is every bit as much enamored with this idea, or he is using it as a con. You just can't tell with David, right? There's a lot of the aura of duplicity coming off of him at all times, so you're not even sure if he believes this shit himself. In any event, it was amusing. It was irritating real quick because of the stupid shit he's saying, but nonetheless, I got like maybe 5 or 6 minutes before I got too disgusted and had to turn it. Okay, so what I want to pursue here is a very interesting concept, and because the concept occurs, and I believe it has validity, I think that we should analyze the idea that it occurring now is not without meaning. And this is the idea. Here's the idea. We live in a materium that is energy and matter. Okay, so there's duality there, right? We live in a materium that some of that energy expresses itself as consciousness, and other aspect of energy does not. Again, duality. We have the various aspects of the plane of existence in which we find ourselves, that like had been defined by Boscovich and these others way back when, these other great thinkers who were detailing our materium down to the fine points, at the finest points they could locate. These aspects would always come down to expressing some aspect or some duality within them, right? And you can't get away from it. The further you look down, the more duality there is. The Large Hadron Collider at CERN confirms this. Every time they come up with one thing, they find its opposite is the next thing that's in line, so to speak, right? Okay, so if we look at this binary nature of our materium, in a really solid way, we have, but we'll look at it at a high level and just use very broad words because they're as illustrative as getting down into the details, and perhaps more so at some significant levels. But we have contention. Okay, so it's consciousness versus matter, right? your desire to do good, but the compelling nature of flesh causing you to do bad, so to speak, on behavior that has been labeled bad. So you are always in contention. Every aspect of your life is contention. If we were to look at some of the details of your body, it is again just expressing the duality in which we find ourselves. So the flow of the blood pumping, how it does it, the sinusoidal movement, the fact that we must have impulse in order to have the pulse in the body, and so on, all expressing duality. And if we just turn our minds a little tiny bit, we see that duality is itself expressing the contention that is within universe. Now, and the material. Now, it is necessary that this be this way, that there be this contention. And from a gritology viewpoint, there's no, so from Einstein's viewpoint, there's no reason that contention should exist or that the universe should be binary. And, Einstein and the rest of the Elohim worshippers are quite content to give in and worship Satan and want to have everything become all hodgepodge and mixed up and non-binary because that's the way that their Elohim gods present it, okay? But it's a non-factual narrative about the materium and universe and why you're here and what's going on. So part of our existence will always be the reconciling of these various aspects of our nature against the various aspects of the materium in which we find ourselves and the contention between those two. And contention is necessary that there might be the various energetic aspects of that as part of the process of universe. So we in building our ontological framework, we can choose an abstraction such as novelty, and we can say, okay, novelty is the point of the existence of everything. And we pursue that, we work it all out, and so on, and we come down to the idea that in an ontologically created materium, in other words, the materium comes from the space allowed it within itself by ultimate consciousness, which a lot of people would call God, but then they would give personalities to, or give it dick in a balls, and all of this kind of stuff, right? Like, who's God gonna fuck? Anyway, so ultimate consciousness decides that it's going to pursue this idea of novelty, which itself is novel, and it gets a big thrill out of this, and it's going to start this whole process, and from then on, contention must arise, because it is that contention is part the energetic process of creation and the energetic process of the discovery of the materium and consciousness by itself within the materium. So consciousness must necessarily isolate itself if it's going to shove itself down here into the materium. And if you go read Thinking and Destiny by Harold Percival, massively tight, concise, there's not one extra word in that book. And it's Thinking and Destiny by Harold Percival. There's a free PDF online. If you read in there, you get a lot of the details about the descriptions of the soul and how it operates and this sort of thing. But he never goes into a reason for all of that, right? It's never stated explicitly that the soul exists in order to encapsulate consciousness such that it may come into the materium. So that's the whole point of the soul, is that if you're going to have ultimate consciousness bust itself up into bazillions of little particles, there's got to be something that separates one from another. And each of those being encapsulated in a soul is what separates the consciousness. And the soul can be conceived of as an extra dense vibratory eggshell around your consciousness, all right? And it's just vibrating at a faster speed with more energy than the rest of your consciousness, and that's what separates it from your consciousness, but it is essentially consciousness. The soul is not conscious of itself. It's not self-aware. And it goes with you from life to life to life to life. And basically the soul would be thought of as a computer program that isolates your consciousness from the rest of all of the other consciousness, such that that computer program could present the illusion of material reality to your mind, to your mind being experienced itself as consciousness within the soul, and it could present it to you such a way that you could not doubt the reality of that separation. This is key, okay? So in other words, it is part of the soul's, the soul's mere existence is what tricks you into thinking you're not part of ultimate consciousness. And but the soul does so much more than that, right? The soul is a giant coordination aspect of the materium. And the materium would not exist without us having souls. Nor would the soul be necessary without the materium. Its purpose is basically to provide the wherewithal, the power, the mechanism through which consciousness may be tricked into believing itself separate and isolated and not part of other consciousness, and could be tricked into understanding that the perceptive body is providing an illusion of reality, okay? And so that's really one of the many facets of the soul. There are other ones that I'm really fascinated to explore, such as the fact that souls allow for the synchronization of time, allow for synchronization of individuals within a time. So everybody that has a soul and is alive now, that they're part of the duties of that soul is to keep them in sync with every other soul that is now currently alive, and to keep that the time dial the same on all of us. It is the soul that allows us to interpret the pulse as the ever-present now of time. And so the pulse is the soul is intimately involved in the pulse of time and its interpretation by our minds operating within that soul. So we're seeing time in the form of this pulse filtered through our souls, and we experience it that way. The soul is necessary that you, and it provides the mechanism whereby consciousness can perceive a self-aware sensation. All right, we need to get into that, but I won't do it now. I want to go into some of these other aspects here. Okay, so the soul is very much involved, and has huge number of responsibilities for us. And one of the very first things that the soul does is to create that isolation that is with you forever. This will last as long as you're part of this video game, right? As long as you're playing the game of life, you will have a soul. It will be the same soul, because the soul is tuned to your consciousness at a vibratory level. Your soul cannot be used by anyone else, nor could you use anyone else's soul. Nor can anything take over your soul that way. You can have your consciousness polluted, let's be quite clear about that. You can allow in evil energies, so to speak, inimical energies that would do you harm, and you could suffer harm as a result of that. But that's you allowing it in. That's not the failure of your soul. Okay, so think of the soul as this like energetic bubble, your command and control center. It's not self-aware. It doesn't know its name. It doesn't care about a name. It doesn't care about anything other than its responsibilities, and it executes those without failure and constantly, and as long as it's asked. Okay, souls are unique. Souls have a vibratory expression that is unique, that can be tracked across time and tracked within time. Now, from an ontological viewpoint, everything I've said is sound and factual. But and again, let's understand that in Thinking in Destiny, he never really goes into the why of it all in the greater sense of the materium. Nor does Harold examine it was written in the 40s and 50s, by the way, but 1940s and 1950s, that book. Nor does he examine the various mechanisms of the soul beyond the point of getting across the idea of the nature of the soul to your consciousness. That was his big thing, was trying to get that through to your head. What I want to do is to explicitly bring the soul into the discussion as a tool of your consciousness. You can use your soul and what it does for you, but also as an inherent aspect of life in this materium. So, in a weird-ass sense, they're trying to control things. The evil, Satan-worshipping Catholic Church is trying to control things, but the rendering of the opinion that aliens have souls is perfectly factual. Okay, everything that is alive in that alive sense in this materium will have a soul, and that soul will serve the same purpose for that being as yours does for you. Now, so imagine the Gritologists. They don't accept any of this. All right, they think your consciousness. They won't acknowledge the soul. All of the Einstein collective for science doesn't ever get into it. They don't investigate the ether. They don't investigate the soul as part of the contention, the binary nature, the required isolation of an ontological model, because they have this grit-only viewpoint, and so they miss vast quantities of universe in their examination, and that's why they're all so stupid and ignorant. Okay, so space aliens, when they show up here, will have souls if they're alive. If they're a robot, no, they won't have souls. They'll just be under the control of something that does have a soul somewhere else. All right, so you can have that kind of an arrangement. You could have a biological robot that had no consciousness, therefore had no need for a soul. Okay, the biological robot could be operating on a analog-based form of a computer program, and sort of be like an autonomous biological drone, and it could even cogitate. It could even think, but it wouldn't be conscious and would not be self-aware as we understand that process. And thus it would not need a soul in order to stay in sync. It wouldn't matter if it felt the pulse of time and the ever-present now and all of that kind of thing. All right, but the vast majority of aliens that we're likely to meet are going to be souled beings, okay? They will have be encapsulated like us. They will have consciousness that the universe is trying, the materium is trying to keep separated for this purpose of novelty creation, which is the one we've chosen. There's many different purposes you could say assign as the primary purpose, but I'm just choosing novelty. So these beings show up. They've got souls. Now, let me back up a little bit. The Gritologist, Feynman and Oppenheimer, these guys developed no one's doing shit to the nucleus of any fucking thing. All they're doing is ripping the ancillary electrons away from the outer shell, and it's that creates these horrific explosions. All right, so now understand that when that occurs, when the materium is disrupted at the level of electricity, at the level of the electrical bond, that is a very disturbing thing for all souls and all of life in universe, independent of their, quote, location, okay? Because what's actually happening is that there is a collective experience of consciousness of some on another planet somewhere else is actually disturbed and damaged by that. because of the nature of the materium and its structure. So we're in the process then in using nukes. You're disturbing the materium itself at a level that was not that's not good. Okay, and that's why these guys show up here. They're here to protect their own interests, right? You can't be doing that shit, they're saying. Okay, so it's an electrical one, and electrical forces have disturbing reactions within the materium itself at levels that cause soul disturbances, cause the souls to be unquiet and reacting in ways and out of sync and stuff. So it comes to the attention of the consciousness that occupies them, and thus they come whizzing here to say, "Hey, what the fuck, dudes? You don't care what you do to each other, separate, your soul from the materium is fine, but don't be fucking with our materium." All right, so this is all aspects of contention, all aspects of the binary nature of our materium. The consciousness in contention with the demands of the flesh and so on. Now, our materium is structured such that we carry forward from life to life to life through our souls. Our souls are the filter through which we build intuition and bring past life knowledge to this current life. It's just one of the features, one of the things they do. Here's why this is pertinent. Okay, here's why this is current, so to speak, and actually it's sort of like prescient because we're going to be getting into it. When the space aliens arrive and they have souls, we're not talking the robots or anything, but the real space alien dudes, and they show on up here, they are naturally going to assume, in my opinion, the fact that they're using the other physics to get here tells me they're not gritologists. Okay, they don't believe in the Einstein understanding, the Einstein collective grit agglutination model. They do not understand things that way. Because we live in a binary universe, the other basic alternative to that is the ontological model. So, you will be dealing with space aliens that are approaching things from an ontological model. This means they understand things like psychic ability. They understand themselves to some greater degree than we do because we're dominated by a grid-only model. They will understand their bodies better than us. They will understand the relationship of the consciousness to the soul. They will understand, likely, their progression from life to life to life and so on. And they may understand a great deal about the materium that we have no knowledge of because we've never looked at it that way. And they may even understand themselves in relation to the greater overall consciousness in ways that we do not. And so they will look down on all the humans that are gritologists as being just slightly, more mentally acute than your average bowl of mud. Okay, they're not going to have a great deal of respect for any of these scientists that you see on TV, any of these physicists. They won't even give Eric Weinstein the time of day, nor Neil deGrasse or any of these guys. They're just too stupid to deal with, right? Do you go out of your way to talk to the slugs in your garden? That's the same kind of feeling these people will have, these beings will have. But they will know that there are, within the boiling mass of humanity, they will know that there are people that are working from an ontological viewpoint. From an ontological viewpoint of things, psychic abilities are very easily understood and very easily explained, elucidated, enumerated, examined, and even the mechanisms of them understood. Okay, one of the mechanisms that is easily understood about psychic ability is the ability to see intent. Okay, to perceive intent, threat, the state of being of the soul that you're in contention with, to be able to perceive these things. It's an aspect of the ontological viewpoint of reality that presents itself to you when you adopt that viewpoint. You no longer discard the idea of auras or the woo of the universe or any of this kind of stuff, right? Because you understand that we're all self-forming in the morass of the ether in a 1/22 trillionths of a second time. 22 trillionths of a second is the duration of our ever-present now in our existence, and it changes us from that time scale to every other second. So we're always constantly new. This is a very key aspect of things that the Gritologists simply will not grasp. But if you follow these thoughts about that, just even a little distance, you can see that you could be with a being that was a souled being that was perceiving your intent, and they would be able to perceive the changes in your intent as they were occurring, synced up by their souls to the ever-present now. And they could also assure themselves that you were in sync as a souled being with that ever-present now, and that you would have that level at a bare minimum of input tying you to the synchronization of them and your interaction and your thoughts. And if you would look at it a particular way, you could see too that you would have the ability to perceive their intent as well, just by the very nature of the fact that you're coming through as consciousness. So now you're still a chunk of consciousness in greater super consciousness from which the materium is constructed. And all of universe, right? You're still that. You have not physically moved. Physicality doesn't exist for consciousness. It is only an illusion that is created in the process of creating the materium. So in that sense, we could say you're living in the video game of life, and that this is the game of the materium, right? Not the Game of Thrones, but the game of the materium. Now, because of the nature of matter and because of the fact that it is also created from consciousness, there are frequencies that abound at too many levels to even count, but it is not necessary as consciousness that you be aware of the number of them in order that you might use any one of them, any one of these frequencies. And just be aware of it, monitor it, and so on, right? And this would be like saying, oh, the state of my health is thus because I can feel the pulse in my neck, right? I can feel my own heartbeat in my neck. And if I elevate my blood pressure, I will become aware of this because of the pounding in my ears, that sort of thing. All right, so you can follow these aspects of the materium just by monitoring by putting your consciousness to monitoring various different frequencies that are appearing in the materium. So for one thing, these guys, the space aliens that show up here, they'll know whether or not they're talking to a gritologist, right? And they'll actually probably be quite actively searching for the people that are operating in the woo, that have a sound ontological viewpoint for their conclusions about reality. And because they will want, these space aliens will want to deal with like-minded individuals, all right? And they're not going to seek out they're not going to put their energy into a known high probability of failure, which is trying to talk to a gritologist about the existence of the soul and that sort of thing. It's a trivial example. Nor do I believe, though, that the space aliens are going to come here to discuss the nuke issues with us. That's not going to be their point. In my way of thinking, they're going to be sitting back and waiting for the ontological view to rise up. And that ontological view, that ability to understand ourselves as not physically actually being anywhere, and that all of physicality in the materium is all an illusion, is a necessary part of the ability to deal as an adult with the space aliens. Because you're not a kid living in a cartoon reality and reacting as though that cartoon is real. And these space aliens don't want to fuck around with the fantasy and the delusions that arise from the gritology viewpoint. And that's really why they're not doing anything with the majority of humans. Now, this is also the ontological viewpoint is Ascension, okay? You hear all of these New Age types out there freaking out over about, going to rise up, going to ascend, when it doesn't really mean your ass is going to float up into the sky or any of that kind of shit. But in order to be able to understand the concerns and expressions of that concern from other soul beings, you're going to have the understanding that their consciousness is in no way different than yours. It is only simply separated by their soul from your soul, and that there's no reason that those souls should necessarily present themselves in a particular kind of a fashion, like, connecting you to a particular kind of a body. So it's not necessary that everybody be a hominid, or, be a particular kind of a DNA or whatever. It's not necessary at all that should occur. In order that, and you would still be able to have meaningful discussion and so on, and that's part of the novelty aspect of it, which always gets back into it. So they're going to want to discuss this kind of shit. And they're going to want to pass on to us what they've learned, and they want to figure out what we've learned about our common shared reality here in the Materium. And many of them probably have not read Boscovich, which is the Theoria Naturalis. You can find it on Amazon. Huge book. It's the best version is both English and Latin. Oh, there is I've heard, I'm going to see if I can track it down, and if anybody knows of it, of a place I could purchase one, let me know. But I've heard of a Boscovich in Greek. In any event, though, so you have to understand that when they come here, they're going to understand contention and they're going to understand contention far different than you do, where you see contention as leading to war. Okay, war is an artificial thing created by banks and banksters and evil Elohim worship cultists in order to exploit the humans that they've laid this strange ass gritology view upon. And it's entirely self-serving by the demiurge servicing people, right? So anybody who's in a rabbinical council anywhere in any aspect of it or supporting it is part of that evil structure. And they are actually, supporting Satan, demiurge, whatever you want to call it. And the space aliens won't want to fuck with these guys because they don't understand shit. They think life is arising from shit. They do not understand that shit doesn't exist at all, and it's merely an illusion. But you can create as much of that as illusion as you want, and so the gritologists are also the shitologists. That's the world in which they live. And no wonder they need ritual to try and keep all this shit from sticking to them. Anyway, when the space aliens show up here, they're going to want to have discussions, okay? They will consider those discussions to be contention as well. Because at that level of the ontological viewpoint, you understand that everything is contention because of the nature of the soul in existence vibrating at its frequency and everybody else's soul vibrating at their frequency. Yes, the souls of humans will all have some base underlying frequencies that are in common, but then they deviate to the point of uniqueness, right? And that's true of all beings in all parts of the materium. So this is a very powerful tool. That's the whole point of this. We're going to go through and create a a rigor, an understanding that we can lay out as a framework, and we can say, okay, the materium is formed this way. Consciousness exists this way within the materium. Here's many of its aspects. And we'll just go on and on and on, and we'll develop this really nice framework for thinking about our reality from this ontological viewpoint. So you can understand that if the only thing that's separating you from your neighbor, from your dog or your cat or a space alien is the vibratory frequency of your soul, and all consciousness is still exactly where it was before the soul was put on it, and it'll always be in that exact same spot, so to speak. Location doesn't exist in consciousness that way, but we'll just assume that it does. We'll talk in three-dimension terms for a while. Okay, so if you understand that there is no real movement, there's no separation of one soul from or one bit of consciousness from the other bit of consciousness physically, it's only done in a vibratory state, then you can see that thought is in the form of psychic ability and stuff is just traveling through consciousness, right? There's nothing slowing it down other than the slight impediment of passing through these various souls. And thus psychic ability is very easily understood. And you could also see how there could be great psychic waves that could roll through all of certain types of souls, and they could roll through all of them simply because of the underlying base vibratory nature of that particular kind of soul. And it could exclude others and so on. So psychic waves may be induced from the universe for the purpose of causing great shifts of the ages. To cause great levels of evolution in terms of thought, growth in life, maturity of vision, and so on and so on, right? These are all easily understood as rolling through the materium emanated by consciousness itself, the ultimate consciousness that creates the materium, in order that things may get shaken up, in order that novelty may occur as a result of this. So in that sense, we're all the neural net for a giant AI, okay? And no, it's not like Carrie Cassidy says. She's just so deluded about AI. She's so fearful of it. The poor woman must live a terribly impacted life just by these thoughts. It does not exist that way. AI, I mean. AI hasn't taken over anything. Robots aren't going to take over. Anyway, though, so that's something else that the ontological model gives you. It gives you the ability to, because you're coming not from the grit, you don't have to sort out through the shit. You've got a high level view and you're drilling down and you can see the tops of their head and the shit their feet are standing in. Then you can say to yourself, oh no, those guys are scammers. That shit can't possibly exist because of X, Y, Z. And so the very first time I heard about Nasara, and then, it was like it could not exist because there was no supporting framework, and it's not possible that the supporting framework of the Nasara law being signed would be hidden or obscured or taken away or any of that kind of shit, right? But then I saw that, oh look, as part of the scam, they're attaching this idea that you're going to be made mega wealthy because of your unique position in universe being aware of this information. But universe demands karma back from you, so you've got to do good with all of the mega wealthy money you're going to get. Which is like, oh, that's a big tell there, guys. They're trying to involve you mentally and emotionally in their scam and supporting it and so on by putting these hooks into the emotion that you're going to, it's not just for you, it's for the greater good, the greater good because you're going to, take some village in Uganda and give them all brick houses or whatever the fuck, right? Anyway, so instantly that all these things are bogus, just like I knew instantly as soon as I saw the guy with his little tiny glasses talking about XRP and the QFS and how tying them together and stuff. It's like, well, wait a second. I thought that the XRP was going to be the Swift replacement. Never mind that technically it can't do that. It's not ever going to be a replacement for Swift. But beyond that, he went ahead and he tied XRP to the QFS and stated categorically that there was a quantum computer network running, and that the XRP was going to be the QFS, the quantum financial system. And so, well, they're taught quantum equals grit. Bear in mind, anytime you hear that, you're dealing with gritologists. So they're wrong right from the get-go. But there's no such thing as a quantum computer network. If you go look it up, you can easily show yourself that this is not possible. These machines are not network able, nor could they support a network, and they work on an analog software that's run in a batch process on a daily basis. So this guy's lying. He's full of shit. It could be that he's just stupid, but it also could be that he's not stupid and he's duplicitous and he sees how the QFS is selling, and so he wants to sell you a bunch of XRP. I think that may be the case because they're offering to do loans. So that's going to get them, they're going to loan you XRP. And that's going to get them into shitloads of trouble with the SEC and these other guys, who will then have a legal basis for coming on in and raping these people with fire hoses because they were giant scammers. They're doing Centra kind of shit. If you have an ontological viewpoint, you can keep yourself from doing stupid things. Oh, you can still be stupid, no question there. But I'm just saying you will not be as inclined to do stupid, life-altering scams on people because you won't believe them yourself, but also you'll know the consequences of acting in on that part of contention. So we live in a binary world. So if I'm going to do things that cause certain kinds of ripples, those ripples will come back to me. That's just the nature of this reality. And so I'm better off not doing that stupid shit, right? If I don't want those consequences. So, it sounds really dumb to say it, but do as you would have done to you. In order to avoid those kind of consequences. But an ontological viewpoint instantly gives you a greater edge over everybody. You're not going to be able to be pressured in ways that the gritologists can. Because you know that the world is not controlled through the grit, and therefore there are these waves of energy and stuff that go through, and there is recompense that comes out as a result of that. In other words, you're going to have good karma because you're not doing bad shit. Anyway, so I'm going to let you go. This is long enough. But just be prepared to understand that as we get further into this year and into next, and we get more and more involved with UFOs and aliens and stuff, that they are not going to be dealing with the people you call government. Okay, all of government and all of their scientists are all gritologists and under the sway of the Elohim worship cult. I've found a few physicists that are not gritologists, that do have an ontological understanding, that are some serious thinkers about it, but they're few and far between. And so that's what the space aliens are looking for, are the adults, the people that understand the nature of the reality that we're dealing in, and are prepared to engage in the contention of discussions about that reality. Bearing in mind that just the discussions themselves will necessarily change both parties' minds and understanding of the common shared reality. The mere fact you're having that discussion does this. And, that's why the gritologists are just not prepared to cope. They're going to send military minds to deal with the aliens, and the aliens are going to say, we don't want to talk to your dogs. Send us a thinking individual, or we're going to go talk to the dolphins. So anyway, if you don't want dolphins taking over the planet, better get your shit together and get an ontological view of things. I'll talk to you guys later. I am doing okay, though. I am healing. I am armed. The circumstances were such that I chose not to use the weapon. It wasn't necessary. And now I don't have to suffer the consequences of having used the weapon, right? Which would be its own hell. So better I should just heal up. And it's not going to hurt me to sit on my ass for a while and mend. So anyway, take care, guys. Talk to you later.